Hey there, friends and enemies. Jopa here again, and today I wanted to talk about improvements I would make in Destiny 2 if I was in charge, keeping a couple things in mind. First off, the community is wide and diverse. It's definitely a casual, friendly game, so I need to make sure that whatever I do kind of has a benefit for the community at large, not just top end players, low end players, or all the casual players, or whatever the case may be. Same thing with PvE versus PvP. It's a diverse player base with a lot of different wants and needs. Keeping that in mind, I'm also going to think about the development cost. I'm not going to say just add more raids, because that's easy. You can say just add more content, but that development time has to come from somewhere. There's got to be like for like changes. And so for that reason, that's where I think I got to keep all of that in mind when talking about changes to the game, because of course if Bungie could, they would just add a ton of new content, not have anything to worry about, never ending, all that kind of good stuff, but it's just not realistic. So jumping into it, first and foremost, I think the end game pattern is not in a terrible place right now, but it's getting a little bit stale for sure. I think two raids a year is fine. I think the two dungeons a year isn't bad. However, dungeons are losing that little bit of magic that made them special. So what I personally would do, replace one of the dungeons each year with a horde mode type game. So we're talking Prison of Elders type, but endless, with a scoreboard so you can see how far you go, how strong your build is, escalating difficulty. So really, you're gonna look at the rewards you might see from a dungeon. So weapons, and then you'd have the master weapons would be for higher point levels. It's an activity everyone can take on at the lower levels, but in order to really master it, you're gonna have to have optimal builds, the best weapons and armor and all that kind of good stuff. So it provides a little bit of something for everybody. And I think Destiny 2, with the skill creep that we've seen, the power creep, it leads to a horde mode being the perfect way to kind of appease everybody in the player base. Now, you could do this also with seasonal content, like a seasonal activity instead of one of the dungeons. However, I don't want an activity like that going away at the end of the season. Or, sorry, at the end of the year, once the season is no longer available. So I would prefer it if it was available instead of one of the dungeons or as an additional activity. And I'm not talking about an activity that's like a kind of a horde mode. You have a couple rounds, and then like escalation protocol is really good, but it's got to be beyond that. Like this is going to be the pinnacle. So every few rounds you have a boss fight, all that kind of good stuff. That is something that I think would benefit Destiny 2 tremendously. On the PvP side, we've got the survival revamp coming next season. We know that's going to be massive changes there. We don't know what that's going to look like, but I will say a good ranked mode. If we can finally get a ranked mode that harkens back to the Luna's Howl chase and all that stuff, and the early feelings of that ranked system, the comp system, I feel like that is going to keep players engaged and going to allow Bungie to look at Trials of Osiris and be like, okay, this is an imperfect game mode. So now we can allow people who don't go flawless to get their good loot. We can allow better rewards for this because we do have a ranked system where people can show off how skilled they are against players who are also of their rank, get the rewards that come along with that, and go from there. Now, I know a lot of people have talked about a seasonal upgrade where it's just a season dedicated to the general playlists of Destiny 2, Crucible, Gambit, Strikes. I don't see that as being realistic personally. However, what I would say is that each season should come with some changes, and then we'll see the major changes in Lightfall. So for example, in Lightfall, say you revamp the power level system. That's what I would like to see, to where power level is not really needed, but you kind of change it to be normal, hard, master difficulty of everything. Now we're also getting the in-game LFG. So now maybe you take away the matchmaking for like even standard strikes. So instead of having levels, you don't have to power level anymore. You don't have to chase pinnacles. But what you do is you reward players who are doing the strikes, who are doing the crucible, all that kind of stuff. You have the same system you have now, where you have the reward tiers, but at the end of every time you rank up, or at the end of every time you get to the next rank, for example, you go from hero to fabled or something like that. Now all of a sudden, if there's a reward, a weapon, a god roll, or a guaranteed red border where you can get a guaranteed crafted item, something like that, where there's a reason, okay, I'm not chasing a pinnacle in my weekly gambit activities. What I'm chasing is my first 3 games of the week. I get a bonus to my experience, and now I'm trying to level up so I can get that red bordered weapon, so I can get the god roll, or maybe even not god roll, but 3, 4 out of 5 roll there. And then now next time I rank up, I'll get a different weapon. So there are a lot of options there, and even the world pool could be used for this. It doesn't have to necessarily just be strike specific weapons or anything like that. But I think that would provide a replayability without requiring on the power level grind. Because I do think the power level idea is outdated. Do I think they're going to completely replace that? Probably not. But it's just a preference of mine that I would like to see. And again, when we look at the comp rework, we're going to see how that goes. So I think having that happen next season and having an additional rework for the rest of the playlist is also important for Lightfall. Now, some other things I'd like to see with the raids. I think master raids are not it necessarily. So as other people have mentioned, I would just prefer contest mode, right? Instead, you just make it contest mode. You don't have any additional champions or anything like that, but it's contest mode is a permanent option with the rewards. They also announced that they're already looking at adept weapons to make them upgraded through craftable options or some kind of better system. So adept master level weapons are worth it. But that's where power creep comes in as well. So you got to be really careful. It's a finer line than most people will give it. So ultimately, what they do with that is going to be interesting. I would personally make it so if you complete the harder version, like contest mode, you do get an adept version. Like all it allows you to do, like maybe the adept versions or the master versions don't actually allow you to get any better stats. They just simply give you the access to the enhanced adept mods, something like that. Because an adept big one's linear fusion is going to be better than a regular linear fusion. So that's an option. I don't know exactly what they're going to do there. However, it will be very interesting to see, because I'm very curious how they're going to handle this, because I do think there are a lot of issues with the current system. I think crafting is good by and large, but for anyone who doesn't like crafting, it's not going to be like they can still farm god rolls. There's nothing wrong with that as well. So that's just for me. I personally prefer the crafting system. As far as the seasonal content goes, I do think variety is needed. These seasonal activities are similar because they're probably easier to make and churn out 4 different options, like 4 seasons worth of activities every single year. But I do think there's got to be maybe there's a season that it is dedicated to the playlist activities, and all of the seasonal weapons are earned in those playlist activities. Maybe you can, like we've seen it before where they've added, like previous to, for example, Rise of Iron, where you had a bunch of different uh, enemies appearing out in the world. I think more of that needs to be done personally. And so if you have stuff that can be encountered in the wild, right, it'll encourage you to explore more, to go out, to do public events, all that kind of good stuff. And I think that's important as well. There's a lot of the game that's not being utilized for various reasons. That's why when they do the haunted lost sectors, that's why they do that, because people aren't really engaging with lost sectors outside of the legend or master ones that are rewarding the exotics. So you need to give reasons to play all of this various content, because the game is very, very wide, very deep. There's a lot to do, but there's not always reasons to do it. And that's really where the key is. And that's what I hope Bungie does, is they find the reasons to play the game as much as possible and play all the different types of activities. So anyway, those are just some quick thoughts of mine, and some things I wanted to keep in mind going forward when giving my feedback. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What would you change to Destiny 2 to make the game better in your personal opinion? Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Destiny 2 content from me going forward. I obviously post a ton about the game already, so you're going to continue seeing that. I'm excited for Lightfall, and I'm hopeful that the changes in the future are positive ones. My name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.